Hello and welcome back to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. I'm your host, Holly Spear,
This is Kate Carter.
And I'm Kylie Caldwell.
and this is Over My Dead Pod in the morning. If you want to see what we look like and want to see what I look like fresh and natural in the AM, you
Yep.
can look at us on
George.
YouTube. Please don't.
Kylie, do you have makeup on?
Of course.
Okay,
I wake
so
up
just look at Holly and I. Don't look at Kylie.
I wake up like this.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Kylie wakes up fly, girl.
Mm.
Guys, I have a kind of conspiracy, kind of unsolved, kind of mystery, kind of disappearance for you guys today.
This is like my nightmare.
Yeah, Kate's stressed already.
I do love a good conspiracy, but sometimes they're a little too crazy.
I think you'll find this one very palatable of a
Okay.
conspiracy.
Good word. Yeah.
Yeah. Today we're diving into the strange and chilling case of Charles Chuck Morgan, a man who seemingly lived a double life, vanished twice, and left behind a cryptic trail of clues that still baffle investigators decades later. This case has everything: organized crime, government conspiracies, coded messages, and a disappearance that turned deadly. And the strangest part is that to this day, no one really knows what happened to Chuck Morgan. His name is Charles Morgan, but he goes by Chuck, so I'm going to use probably his name interchangeably, so don't get confused. But we're going to start with his life. So to understand the mystery surrounding Chuck's disappearance and death, we have to start with his life. Charles Chuck Morgan was a successful businessman living in Tucson, Arizona in the late 1970s. He's married at this time to his wife, Ruth, and together they have 4 daughters. On the surface, he is just an ordinary family man. He's also actually the president of a statewide escrow service, a company that handles real estate transactions. Now, that might not sound like a high-risk job, but in Arizona at the time, it was actually a field that had a lot of potential for corruption. And that's because the state of Arizona at the time allowed land to be bought and sold under blind trusts. And blind trusts mean that the actual owners of the land could remain anonymous. So this kind of created perfect conditions for money laundering, shady business deals, and even organized criminal activity. Chuck had always been a relatively normal guy. He was on the rifle team in college, but he hadn't carried a gun in years. But one random day, seemingly out of nowhere, Charles started getting paranoid, and he started carrying a gun. Not too abnormal, but then one day he came home wearing a bulletproof vest and had purchased 2 new firearms. So his wife is obviously like, what the hell is going on? But he refuses to tell her why. Now, I don't know about you, but if my spouse suddenly started doing this, I think I'd have some sort of minor questions. And Ruth did, but every time she tried to ask, Chuck would just shut her down.
I mean, yeah, a lot of questions. First question is, should I also be wearing a bulletproof vest?
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah, why just you? And the paranoia didn't stop there. He became even more withdrawn, more anxious. He refused to let anyone else drive their daughters to school. Only he could do it. He started growing out his beard, changing his routine, and looking over his shoulder constantly. Something had Chuck terrified. And then, on March 22nd, 1977, Chuck vanishes. It was a Tuesday morning, and Chuck was dropping off his daughters at school. So he drops them off, everything's as usual. But then he just never comes home. He didn't call, he didn't leave a note, nothing. At first, Ruth was worried, but strangely enough, she did not report him missing right away.
With significant others, how long do you wait? How long would you wait?
Like, I wouldn't let it go overnight.
Would you call before the night happened?
Yeah.
And they weren't like, well, what year are we in, by the way, for this story?
This is in the 70s.
Okay, so there's not phone tracking and shit like that. But
Yeah.
now, if we like, you couldn't see their location and it was about to be nighttime and nobody could get in touch with them, you'd probably call the cops.
Yeah, 100%.
Think
I
would.
think it also like depends on the circumstances. Like if Luke's flying and he doesn't come home, yeah, obviously. If they're like out with people, like
Terrifying.
maybe not, but I don't think I'd let it go too late into the night, you know?
Yeah, no, I get that.
So I know what you're thinking. Why not? Because if my husband started acting like this and acting like he was in danger, and then suddenly he disappeared, the first thing that I would do would be to call the police. But Ruth didn't. Maybe she trusted that Chuck would just come home, or maybe she was too afraid to involve the authorities. After all, Chuck had been keeping secrets. 3 days later, in the middle of the night, Ruth was awoken to the sound of their dog barking. So she gets out of bed, she goes to the back door, and when she opens it, there's Chuck. He was distraught, and he had obviously been through something horrible. He looked terrible. He was barefoot. He had one shoe missing. His hands were bound together with plastic handcuffs, and he had another handcuff around his ankle. And here's where it gets weirder. Chuck couldn't speak, or he wouldn't speak. He was like frantically pointing to his throat, and he would shake his head like no, I can't talk. So Ruth is still like half asleep and trying to process what's going on. And she asked him if he could talk. He shook his head no. So she runs inside, she grabs a pen and paper, and she hands it to him. And what he wrote was chilling. Chuck claimed that he had been kidnapped and drugged with a hallucinogenic substance that had been smeared on his throat. He wrote that if he swallowed, it could cause permanent nerve damage or even kill him. I don't know.
How can you not swallow?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I
I
don't know
wouldn't.
if they just told him that or if this is kind of like a so exactly what he had been exposed to, we don't know, and more importantly, who had done it to him. Ruth wanted to call the police, but the second that she said that, Chuck panics. He shakes his head frantically and grabs the pen again. This time he writes, "If you call the police, you'll be signing a death warrant for the entire family." That was enough for Ruth to stop in her tracks. She and Chuck had 4 daughters together. If what he was saying was true, calling the police could put them all in danger. So instead, she focused on keeping Chuck alive. Over the next week, Ruth used an eyedropper to give him water, making sure he didn't accidentally swallow too much of this drug in his throat. And slowly, he seemed to recover. So she's like pouring an eyedropper for water.
Into his throat?
Yeah, like into his mouth. Like that's how he got water instead of like just drinking.
But isn't that swallowing?
I mean, yeah, he's just like not gulping down. Like he's not taking a full drink. I
I'm gonna
know.
call this is all false. This is
I know.
all he lying.
It's sketchy. But the mystery didn't stop there. When he could finally speak again, Chuck revealed something even more shocking. Chuck told Ruth that he wasn't just an ordinary businessman. He was actually working as an undercover agent for the federal government. Specifically, he claimed he was helping the U.S. Treasury Department investigate money laundering and organized crime. Now, this raises a lot of questions. First of all, if he was working for the government, why didn't he have any sort of protection? Why didn't he go to the police? And if he wasn't working for the government, then what was he mixed up in that had him so scared? Because whatever it wasn't over. And Chuck refused to give Ruth any more details. He kept insisting that it was safer if he didn't. At this point of the story, I'll just be honest, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think so. This is not really adding up, you know?
None of this pieces together. And the whole
Yeah.
like him saying he's undercover as well. Well, you would call the cops. Well, you wouldn't call the cops.
Exactly.
He would call somebody, you know?
Yeah, like you wouldn't have to be scared for your life if you're I mean, yeah, you probably would be nervous if you're working for the government, like as an undercover agent or whatever. Like that would be, yeah, it's scary, but like, then why can't you call them? Why are you having to like protect yourself and them not protect you at all, you know?
Honestly, it's the whole swallowing thing for me. That was just immediately a no.
Yeah, it was for me too.
Yeah.
But I'm going to argue that your mind is going to be changed here pretty soon. So
Shit. Okay.
then on June 7th, just a few months later, Chuck vanishes again. But this time he would not come back alive. On that morning, Chuck left the house as usual. He drops his daughters off at school again, but then he never comes home. And this time, Ruth doesn't wait. She goes straight to the police and files a missing persons report. Days pass, but there is no sign of Chuck. No calls, no letters. Then, 9 days later, Ruth receives a chilling phone call. A voice on the other end of the line was a woman. The woman said, "Ruthie, Chuck is all right. Ecclesiastes 12:1-8. Then the line went dead. That was the last message that Ruth would ever receive about her husband, because the very next day, Chuck's body would be found lying in the desert. On June 18th, 1977, 10 days after Chuck's disappearance, police received a call from a driver traveling along US Highway 86, about 40 miles west of Tucson. There, on the stretch of desert road, lay a body of a man dressed in a suit with a bulletproof vest on and cowboy boots. It was Chuck Morgan. He had been shot in the back of the head with a .357 Magnum, which lay nearby his body. It was his own gun. My first thoughts doing this case is probably the same as a lot of you guys are hearing this case, is that he's going through some kind of some kind of mental episode, and this was suicide. But if you think it was a simple case of suicide, just wait, because the details of Chuck's death make absolutely no sense. So let's first talk about the scene itself. Chuck's car was parked nearby, and inside it, investigators found a strange collection of items: 2 CB radios, a police scanner, a sawed-off shotgun, a pistol, and perhaps, strangest of all, another pair of plastic handcuffs. Now, keep in mind that Chuck was reportedly abducted in March, and when he showed up at his house, both his hands were bound with plastic handcuffs. So why did he now have a set of his own? Had he bought them? Had someone left him in his car? And then there was what Chuck had on him. So pinned to his underwear was a $2 bill covered in strange markings. So let's break this down. On one side of the bill, there is a list of Spanish names written in alphabetical order. Above the names, written in Chuck's handwriting, was a Bible reference: Ecclesiastes 12:1-8. If this sounds familiar, that's because it's the exact passage that the mysterious woman had referenced when she called Ruth just the day before. So what does it say? It's a passage about referencing God before death, describing the breakdown of the body and the return of the soul to the Creator. It even includes an eerie line that says, "Then people go to their eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets." If that wasn't enough, on the back of the bill was what appeared to be like a crude, like roughly drawn map with road names and markings that seemed to point to the very spot where Chuck was found. Was this Chuck's writing? Was he leaving clues? Was he trying to send a message to whoever found him? Or was this something that a killer left? After Chuck's body was found, the Pima County Sheriff's Department opened an investigation. But instead of treating this as a murder, they quickly began leaning towards suicide. Pausing here, let's remember that Chuck has been shot in the back of the head. Not the temple, not under the chin, like the literal back of his head. I think that would be a very difficult way to take your own life. The bullet was actually lodged between his front teeth, which suggests that he was shot from behind at an upward angle. Yet authorities concluded that Chuck somehow managed to hold the gun behind his own head and pull the trigger. And by the way, Chuck is right-handed, always has been, and the gun is found right beside his left hand.
Why would you do it in the back of your head? That's the whole, like.
Yeah, like why? I mean, unless he's just trying to make it look like that he is being shot, like if he's going through some kind of like manic episode and he's trying to make it like he was shot by someone else. I don't know. It's an elaborate scene, but I don't know. I mean, I guess that's possible. To make matters worse, the medical examiner disagrees with the sheriff's ruling that it's a suicide. While authorities were quick to close the case, the coroner refused to list the death as a suicide, instead marking it as undetermined. There just wasn't enough evidence to say for sure. But if Chuck didn't take his own life, the only other possibility is murder. And then there's the strangest part of all. Just days after Chuck's body is found, investigators receive a phone call from a woman who refused to identify herself. She only gave the name Green Eyes. She claimed that she had met with Chuck 4 times while he was missing that first time. She said Chuck told her there was a $90,000 contract on his life and it was increasing $5,000 per day. She also said that Chuck had shown her a briefcase full of money, but when police searched Chuck's belongings, there was no briefcase, no cash, nothing. Who was Green Eyes? To this day, no one knows. But this call actually happened to police, so we know that that's for real, verified. That's right.
Yeah, like it happened for sure.
Yeah. Here's where things get even more suspicious. Shortly after Chuck's death, Ruth said that 2 men claiming to be FBI agents showed up at her house unannounced. They flashed badges and then they pushed their way inside. They ransacked her home, searching through files, tearing apart furniture, and never explaining what they were looking for. They then left without a word. Ruth was too upset to think about writing their names down. And it wasn't just Ruth's house that was searched. It was Chuck's car, which had been impounded, they mysteriously found had been broken into. Then his office was found broken in and ransacked. Whoever was looking for something was desperate to find it. And no one will ever know for sure if these men were FBI or someone else. But here's the real kicker. When investigative journalist Don Duvreau requested FBI records on Chuck years later, the FBI responded with something shocking. They said that they had no records of ever investigating or working with Chuck Morgan. Nothing. It was as if his case had never existed. But who even has a motive to kill Chuck? So at the time of his death, Chuck had connections to multiple high-risk situations. So first, there's the organized crime angle. So during the 1970s, Arizona kind of became a hotspot for organized crime, serving as both a key route for drug trafficking and a hub for money laundering. The state's appeal to crime was largely due to a law that allowed individuals to purchase land through an anonymous blind trust, which we kind of talked about before. This loophole provided criminals with an easy way to launder money without leaving a trace. Chuck Morgan, who worked in a real estate escrow, was known to have handled several transactions for at least one Mafia-connected family. There was also speculation that he may have been involved in facilitating the purchase of gold and platinum that were often used to conceal illicit funds. So like money laundering and transactions of gold and blah, blah, blah. This investigative journalist who looked into Chuck's case noted that Charles had dealt with some of Arizona's most powerful crime organizations. According to this journalist, it was easy for someone in his position to get too deep, especially when managing high-value transactions that may have only existed on paper. He described Chuck as a legitimate businessman who may have unknowingly stepped too close to dangerous criminal operations. At one point, Chuck had also told his wife that there was money laundering going on around him, but that it was nothing that he was currently involving himself in, and said, "The less you and the girls know, the better off you will be." There's also the government angle. Chuck was working for the government, like as someone investigating this criminal activity, or if he was money laundering for them and they were like using him as like a secret agent or whatever to find these people. Chuck claimed to be working as an undercover agent for the U.S. Treasury Department, investigating money laundering. If that was true, could someone in the government have wanted him silenced? Some people have also theorized that Charles was actually working for the FBI and that this $2 bill had been an attempt to pass a coded message back to the FBI or authorities before he was killed. Maybe he was investigating something or something was leading to his killers, and I don't know. The problem that I have for this is like, why is the government not protecting him?
I feel like that can be a hit or miss though.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they're like, nope, we weren't involved with them kind of thing at all, but they 100% were, you know?
Yeah.
Do we think that's the case? Hit us, Kylie. Tell us.
The U.S. Treasury Department, as far as I know, are not doing undercover work. Like that's the
Yeah.
FBI, CIA, whatever. And like money laundering, yeah, FBI would be involved, but I feel like that's like an IRS issue. Of course, if you're undercover and something happens, but the case they're working on is still open, obviously they're not going to say one of our informants got
Right.
killed. But this was in what, the 70s? So case should be resolved by now. They would say, hey, yeah, one of our informants got killed.
Yeah. They would have come back at some point.
Yeah. The other like sketchy thing that's going on at the time is Arizona's blind trust laws, which we talked about. It allowed corrupt politicians and businessmen to buy and sell land anonymously. But if Chuck had records proving fraud and someone wanted to shut him up, this could be another, a possible situation. I think I'm a little ignorant to the gravity of these blind trusts because the sale of like anonymous tracts of land doesn't seem like something someone would kill over, but I guess you could like be purchasing at like a large capacity, or you're trying to like hide money by doing this. I'm not really sure. It could be a motive, I guess. The other motive is just like a mental illness and suicide. Of course, there's obviously the theory that Charles Morgan could have committed this suicide and that maybe his death and paranoia was a result of either mental illness or drugs or a combination of them. I think that this theory is a little flawed just because there has to be someone else involved in it because of the callers, that the person that's been calling the police and called the family. I mean, I guess you always have like those weird people. We've heard about them like time and time again in investigations that call in and pretend to know something that they don't. And I'm not sure how much of the information was released to the public about the wife hearing someone call before he was killed and they mentioned this Bible verse. I don't know if that was public and then maybe somebody called and said it again to the police, just being like
Right.
trollers or whatever. I don't know. I think the fact that this was ruled a suicide. The medical examiner ruled it just undetermined. Like the police were saying it's a suicide. So I think it makes it a little bit more unlikely that people are going to be calling in. It's not this like unsolved murder. You know what I mean?
Right. There had to be a reason for them calling in.
Yeah.
Devil's advocate theory, if it was a suicide and he was having like a mental break, could easily like pay someone a couple bucks to make that phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the plastic handcuffs for me, I'm just like, if this is like, maybe he did get messed up in like some high-end transactions and he was killed by the mafia or whatever. Like, why are they using plastic handcuffs?
Also, when you say plastic handcuffs, we're talking about like you could break the handcuffs.
I don't know.
I don't know. Police use them.
Plastic?
Yeah. They have like the zip tie ones.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Like the zip tie, can't get out of those.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're talking about. What are your feelings?
It could go either way. If it is government related, I'm pretty sure it would have come out by now.
Yeah.
If it wasn't government related, what the hell does any of that mean? But I also don't understand the whole like him coming home one day wearing a bulletproof vest. Like if you were undercover, you wouldn't have been doing that. You know, that's not, or having more guns. Like
Yeah.
you would have already had guns or something. I don't know. But it also makes me a little eerie that his wife didn't do shit for a while. Like, it kind of makes me think maybe she knew more than what was going on. Like, he either was having a mental break and she kind of saw it coming, or how did she not contact police for 3 days?
Yeah. No, that's really odd to me.
My big issue, whether it's the government or some mafia or whatever, they kidnapped him, tortured him, and then they set him loose with handcuffs still on. I feel like if they're going to go through that, like they would just have already killed him already.
Or he escaped.
He can escape, but he can't swallow.
I'm telling you, I'm not going to lie to you guys. The whole swallow thing is the one that points me that this is all not true.
Yeah. I mean, they could have like someone could have told him that to scare him. Don't talk, like as in don't call the police, don't talk to the police. You can't, if you talk, you're gonna die. It's weird because there's not more direct evidence because it is ruled a suicide. So there's not really a ton of investigation going on with the police. So we don't have a lot of evidence to go off of. We just have these like weird conspiracies, which I think are like pretty plausible in this situation. Usually I don't go for conspiracies, but I mean, it is weird.
But when they mark a case of suicide, it's closed. Like you can't go back and reopen it. So then that makes me think the police were just wanting to close it.
Yeah.
I guess it's not publicly available. The reason, if they have good reason to rule it a suicide, like the ballistics, angles, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, the plastic handcuffs also being in his car makes me think they were his.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also the fact that we do know that people were searching through his car and his office. Like, I mean, his home, you could say maybe his wife's lying. Maybe she's, just in on this conspiracy too about these people coming to her house. But we actually know that his office was broken into. Like someone else called that in. There was a whole police report, blah, 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 So like there are things going on after his death
that are weird.
That are very weird. I don't know. So that part is weird to me that there's still these things going on or after he's dead, he can't be the one doing them. So my maybe most likely thing, and I'm so like leery to say this because I don't really like conspiracies all the time, but I do think that probably he was doing some kind of laundering, or maybe was about to turn something in that someone else was doing, and he was killed, and they're looking for like evidence of it.
Yeah.
After he's dead. I do think that he was probably involved in something. Now, whether it's like actually mafia or just like someone trying to launder money or blah blah blah, maybe him saying he's a government informant is maybe coming from the fact that he's about to turn them in, or the government has said go ahead and keep like doing this for a little bit and we're going to collect blah blah blah. I don't know, that's just what I'm feeling.
Yeah, it makes me I don't know. It literally it's one way or the other, and I'm not really leaning, I don't know, because I keep going back to the swallowing thing. But like you're right. If someone told you that, like let's say you were kidnapped and someone
Mm-hmm.
told you I just did like they did something with your mouth and then they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I did this to you, you wouldn't want to swallow either. But he absolutely 1,000% did swallow when he was drinking drops from a dropper or at night, or I literally couldn't go an hour. I couldn't go 10 minutes probably.
Yeah.
That's weird. I also don't understand why his wife did nothing. That makes me suspicious that she
Mm-hmm.
knows maybe he was into something illegal.
Yeah. And she had suspicions that he was. Like he said that he had told her long before this that there was money laundering going on. So she knows that he's mixed up in something odd, and then he starts being paranoid and wearing the bulletproof vest and blah blah blah. So I think
Yeah.
she knows something's going on.
Middle ground. Obviously, there's some shenanigans going on. He knew about it. He was threatened. I guess the paranoia just kind of caused a mental breakdown.
So Kylie's firm on the suicide.
I think I am. I think I
I
am.
would love to see the lining of how he was shot, like the points and everything, so we could see.
Because my whole thing is if you're being threatened and you honestly think someone's going to kill you and your entire family, just wearing a bulletproof vest, like not moving, still going to work, still dropping your kids off at their school,
Right.
I would be out of the country.
Or just not even leaving your house,
Carly, what do you think
Something.
about the people coming to breaking in his office and his car and all of that, like afterwards? Do you think that that's from like some kind of shady dealing that he has going on?
It could be, it could also just be he's dead, police are investigating, there's all these rumors, all these bad people that he was working with, or
Mm-hmm.
he kind of knew, they're like, oh, he has evidence of our shenanigans. We need to get it before
Yeah.
the police find it.
Yeah.
I'm not dead set on suicide, but I don't know. This mafia shenanigans is kind of far fetched.
Yeah. I usually like anytime that's brought up in a case, I usually just disregard, because how often does that really happen? But I don't know. So, was Chuck Morgan a whistleblower who knew too much, an agent caught between the government and the mob, a victim of a cover up, or just a man who was going through a mental crisis? We may never know. The case remains officially closed, with authorities claiming that he took his own life. But Ruth never believed that, and neither did Chuck's daughters. They're still fighting to uncover the truth. Maybe one day someone will come forward, or maybe there's still a clue out there waiting to be discovered. And maybe this person, this green eyes person, knows something and will someday come forward. If you have any information about Chuck Morgan's case, contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-882-7463, or submit an anonymous tip at www.88crime.org. And that is the case of Charles or Chuck Morgan. All right, so should we jump into overtime? Okay, Kylie has an overtime for us today.
Today, the day we're recording, is the day of the Super Bowl. And so I think next year we need to implement some new rule changes to the NFL. The first rule I have is no kickers. Get rid of them. All of them. I think it's such a stupid thing. We're playing football, it's intense, throwing, tackling, whatever, running. Why are we leaving it up to a little white guy who just kicks and then misses half the time when that's his freaking job?
Kylie, I'm not gonna lie. Okay. I'm not saying I'm the biggest NFL football fan here, but you're mainly college, right? You
Yes.
would say. Holly, do you watch football?
No.
Okay. I only watch NFL. I freaking hate kickers. I don't hate that they're there and I don't hate them as individuals, but when it's your fucking job to kick a field goal, you better damn well kick that field goal. Anybody can attest that watches football with me. I do not understand when kickers miss simple field goals.
And the thing, the extra point after the touchdown, you're kicking from the same distance every single time.
Yep, it hasn't changed. Has not changed. And now I will say devil's advocate on this. Wherever the football is placed, you then kick it from. And sometimes the placeholder can put it different, like it's a very quick interaction. So the football might be turned or it might not be facing the right way or all this. So that shit does happen, but it's your freaking job. It's the one thing you do. You don't do anything else.
Yeah. And then if anyone touches you, they get in trouble.
Yep. I wouldn't say ban them. You could if you want to, but I don't understand the point if you're not going to make it.
Next rule, I think halftime, the cheerleaders on each team should have like a battle, like Bring It On style.
Ooh.
And the winner of the battle gets a point for the team.
Oh, that would be just 1 point. Just 1 point.
Just 1 point.
Yep. I think that would be fun. And I'm sure all NFL fans would love that. So
the guys would love it. The girls would love it. The gays would love it.
We'd all love it. Yep. That's a good one, Kylie. It's not a rule that needs to be changed, but it's a rule that needs to be put in place.
I think if you win a playoff game, you get to steal one player from the losing team throughout the whole playoffs.
Okay.
At least making NFL or football just way more
juicy.
Yeah.
So if you win a playoff game, whoever you just beat, you get to steal one of their players.
Yes, anyone you want.
But what if that player is like, fuck you guys, I'm just going to play horribly and make you guys lose your next game?
He could do that, and that's the gamble.
He could. That is a true thing. Definitely don't pick a kicker.
No kickers.
No, don't trust them. Okay,
I think instead of the coin toss, it's boring and it's stupid. Rock, paper, scissors.
I do love that. I love a good game of rock, paper, scissors. I do that with everything. That's a big 2 out of 3,
And I feel like the gambling companies would really get behind that because a lot more money involved. 3 options instead of you can do a rock, paper, scissors. Like everyone can bet on those instead of just like heads or tails.
Yeah. The coin toss, I don't know if that was like a thing that there's a reason that they do that and shit and they just kept it. But I love that idea, Kylie. I'm on board for rock, paper, scissors.
Thank you.
Yep.
Another one I have, kickoff returns. I'm just now realizing we have a lot of international listeners and they might not understand any of this. But a kickoff return is when it's the other team's turn. So the team that just played, they kick the ball and then the new team has to run the ball back and then that's where they start. There are too many people on the field during kickoff returns. I think it should be 3-on-3.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know what that was, so I'm glad you explained it.
Okay, well, also they don't have to run. So that's one of the rules too, is that when the team kicks it to you, you get the ball. If it goes past you and into the end zone, then you're starting at a certain point. They could catch. Well,
I'm feeling like when you first play a card game and people are explaining the rules to you,
Okay. So, I have a rule, Kylie.
Okay.
Holly, get this, because Kylie's gonna know this. Get this. Let's say I make a touchdown, right? You're the other team.
Okay.
If I taunt you, like I'm like, haha, motherfucker, like blah, 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 like in your face or whatever, I get penalized.
No, I don't like that.
Like, I just think that's stupid.
No, and they banned like all the fun celebrations. Like you can't
you can't do the fun dunks or whatever. Like,
no, bring it back. Let's bring back the dancing. Let's bring back the shit talking.
And it doesn't matter on touchdown. It's any point in the game. If you taunt another player, your team gets penalized.
Kylie's completely against that, though. Do you see that?
No.
We want to be able to taunt without getting penalized.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because you used to be able to do whatever you wanted to.
Yeah.
But now they have a rule in place that taunting's not allowed. And it's the dumbest.
And you want to bring it back.
Oh yeah.
I want to go one step further. I think they should be allowed to fight 1 time per game.
Or just, I was gonna say like hockey, let them fight, but once the helmets come off, the refs have to go and wrestle them.
Yes. And if the refs can break it up, then fine, you can penalize them. But if the football players beat up the refs, game's over, they win.
I don't know anything about football, but I really love the cheerleader idea. I think that could change the whole dynamic of the entire game.
Holly would watch football.
Yeah, I would. No, I would I would 100, they could gain so many female watchers because I would be there.
That's what they need. They need the female watchers. Taylor Swift brought some, but I think the cheerleaders could bring the rest.
Yeah.
Yep.
That being said, are you guys watching today's game?
Yes. Go Birds.
Probably
Who
will.
are you? Who are you going? Oh, you're going. Well, Holly. Kylie's wearing an Eagles shirt, so that
Who's playing? I don't even.
Are you kidding?
Taylor Swift versus the Eagles.
Chiefs and the Eagles. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
the two most stupid teams. in
Hated
my head.
teams.
I literally, if you asked me
Hey,
what
you're
what
gonna
two
get us
teams-
canceled. People are gonna stop listening.
I don't give a hoot. Okay, this is Kate's opinion. All right, everybody. If you asked me what are my two most hated teams in NFL, I would have told you the exact two teams that are playing the Super Bowl today. Overrated. No offense, Kylie. The Eagles fans are the worst fans in the NFL. Chiefs.
He's wearing an Eagles shirt.
Yep.
You bitch.
Chiefs. I probably won't watch, which might be my first Super Bowl I never watch, but I would like both teams to lose.
You're not gonna watch for the halftime show.
I probably will just turn the
Who's
TV on for
performing?
halftime.
Kendrick Lamar.
Are you kidding me, Holly?
Mm.
Holly, what world do you live in? Not America.
No.
Okay, we're gonna have a PowerPoint night and we teach Holly football.
We
No.
should. Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
No, but
No,
it would
and we'll
also
do-
be like
we'll do
not
fun
just the
stuff.
rules, but like the lore and the gossip and the drama.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll do each
Well-
slide has a drink or snack associated with it.
Ooh.
Okay. Well, if
Okay,
you make it
and
fun
you'd
for
be
me,
in.
like a little kid learning math, then
Yeah, we will.
And with that, I'm gonna go learn football. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. If you want even more episodes and content, you can follow us at overmydeadpod.com and Over My Dead Pod on Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, all the things. We would appreciate your like and your rate. It helps us to find the motivation to keep going. Okay, we'll see you next time for another case. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.